New Flyer is a North American leader in transit bus design and manufacture. The diesel hybrid Excelsior 40-foot low-floor transit bus, designed and manufactured for the San Francisco Municipal Transit Authority, is an example of this leadership. This presentation will familiarize service personnel with the disc brakes on the Excelsior 40-foot hybrid bus. The operators and maintenance guides that accompany the vehicle are the final authority with respect to safety, maintenance, and operational parameters. Consult the guides or your supervisor should you have any questions or require additional information. 3 types of headings are used in the maintenance guide to attract your attention. Danger indicates a hazardous situation which, if not avoided, will result in death or serious injury. Warning is used when an operating procedure or practice, if not correctly followed, could result in personal injury or loss of life. Caution is used when an operating procedure or practice, if not strictly observed, could result in damage to or destruction of equipment. These headings will be used in this presentation where appropriate. You will need a number of tools from the special tool list to perform inspections, routine maintenance, and replacement of components of the disc brake system. Disc brake operation. During brake application, the push rod of the brake chamber extends and moves the actuator lever in the brake caliper. This input force is transferred by an eccentric roller bearing to the bridge section of the caliper. This force is then distributed by the bridge and 2 threaded tubes to the tappets. The tappets apply force directly to the inboard brake pad. Once the running clearance between the brake pads and brake disc have been overcome, the reaction forces are transmitted by the sliding caliper to the outboard brake pad. The clamping force of the brake pads on the brake disc generates the braking force. When brake pressure is released, the return spring within the caliper forces the bridge section along with the threaded tubes and lever back to the starting position. An automatic adjuster mechanism is used to ensure consistent running clearance between the brake pads and brake disc. The adjuster is mechanically connected to the lever and will operate each time the brakes are applied. The running clearance between the pads and brake disc increases as the brake pads wear. This increased clearance will allow the adjuster mechanism to rotate slightly. A drive chain transfers this movement to both threaded sleeves, which rotate inward equally. The rotational inward movement of the threaded sleeves and tappets effectively takes up the additional running clearance as the brake pads wear. Inspection. The following inspections may be performed with the brake caliper assembly installed on the axle, providing that the following preparatory steps have been taken. Raise the vehicle to working height and properly support it with jack stands. Remove the wheel and tire assembly. For the purposes of this presentation, the balance of the video will feature an axle and brake assembly removed from the bus for better views. Regular maintenance inspection. Note: refer to the preventive maintenance section of your service manual for the scheduled interval at which the following inspections are to be performed. Regular maintenance inspections are necessary to maintain the life of the operating components. Depending on operating conditions, inspection may need to be carried out more frequently than specified in the maintenance schedule. A basic guideline for brake component inspections is pad wear on a regular basis with a minimum of every 3 months. Caliper running clearance, minimum annually. Brake adjuster, with every pad change, includes tappet seals, discs, cracks, and odd wear patterns. Note: brake pads and relevant parts may be required to be returned to validate a warranty claim. Mechanical wear indicators. A preliminary visual check of the condition of the brake pad rotor wear can be made without removing the wheels. It provides an indication of when to schedule a full wheel removed inspection. The thicknesses of both the pads and rotors will affect the wear indicator position. Note: These inspections do not constitute out-of-service criteria. Inspect the position of the guide pin compared to the solid rubber bushing. The guide pin should protrude out from the rubber bushing when the pads are new. If the pin and bushing are flush with each other, it is time to perform a wheel-off inspection. Inspections. Brake pads. Remove pads from caliper following the recommended service manual procedures. Follow all safety procedures as outlined in the New Flyer Service Manual and Muni Shop procedures. Use only OEM parts in order to optimize the engineered braking characteristics. Note: pads must be removed to perform inspection properly. Measure the pad friction material thickness with a suitable measuring device. If found to be equal or less than 0.079 inches or 2 millimeters, the pads must be replaced. If pad thickness is within acceptable measurement, inspect pad surface. Replacement is required if major damage on the surface is found. Acceptable damage includes slight surface irregularities that align with rotor rotation. Unacceptable damage includes fraying along the edges or irregularities that cross the pad surface. When performing a replacement, it is strongly recommended to replace all pads on the same axle. Brake rotor inspection. Examine the rotor and measure the thickness of the thinnest point on the running surface. Avoid measuring near the edge of the rotor as minor burrs and corrosion accumulation will give false readings. If the rotor thickness is 1.46 inches or 37 millimeters or less, the rotor must be replaced. Machining of rotor surface is permitted providing imperfections are 0.06 inches or 1.5 millimeters or less. The maximum brake rotor disc runout is 0.0059 inches or 0.15 millimeters. Caution: the use of non-approved brake rotors may reduce levels of safety and invalidate warranty. Rotor surface imperfections. The imperfections that follow will not remove a rotor from service. Small cracks spread over the entire surface. Radial cracks less than 1.5 millimeters deep. Unevenness of surface less than 1.5 millimeters deep. Cracks penetrating to the cooling duct or the outer friction ring indicate the disc must be replaced. Caliper running clearance. Caliper movement test A. Follow all standard foundation brake safety working practices while performing this test. Force caliper back and forth on sliders by hand. An audible noise and slight movement should be present. Caliper movement of 0.7 to 1.2 millimeters or 0.027 to 0.047 inches must be possible. If movement is not attained by using a high level of hand pressure, the caliper movement test B will need to be performed. Caliper movement test B. Follow all standard foundation brake safety working practices while performing this test. Remove wheel. Cage the spring brake. Push the caliper assembly inboard on its guide pins. Using a suitable tool, press the inboard pad away from the tappets. Check the gap between the tappet face. The measurement should be between 0.027 inches or 0.7 millimeters and 0.047 inches or 1.2 millimeters. If movement is within this range, no further inspection is needed. Caution: if clearance is greater than 0.047 inches or 1.2 millimeters, there is a danger of brake failure. If less than 0.027 inches or 0.7 millimeters, brake overheating will result. If there is no movement at all, inspect the guide pins. If movement is found but the running clearance is too small or too large, the adjuster may not be functioning correctly and should be checked. Inspecting adjuster mechanism. Chock vehicle to prevent rolling and release spring brake. The adjuster cap is located on the inboard side of the caliper housing to the side of the brake chamber. Note, left rear and right front caliper adjusters will be on the bottom. Right rear and left front will be on the top. Caution, do not turn the adjuster without a shear adapter or adjuster will be damaged. Caution, do not use open-end wrench on shear adapter or it will be damaged. Remove adjuster cap using tab, taking care not to move the shear adapter. Using a box end wrench or ratchet and socket, turn shear adapter counterclockwise and listen for the sound of 2 or 3 clicks as the mechanism increases running clearance. If the shear adapter fails, replace and attempt a second time. If the second attempt fails, the adjuster mechanism is seized and the caliper must be replaced. Running test. Position a box end wrench or socket on the shear adapter so that it can turn freely without coming into contact with other parts. Make a few moderate brake applications at about 30 psi. The wrench or socket should turn clockwise in small increments. The adjuster mechanism has failed if the wrench or socket does not turn at all, turns only with first application, turns forwards, then backwards with every application. Guide pin bearing inspection. Remove pads from caliper. Clean dirt, road grime, etc. from guide pin or cover. Using hand pressure only, no tools, verify that the caliper can slide freely along the whole length of the guide pin arrangement. The movement should be at least 0.8 inches or 20 millimeters. If the movement is less than 0.8 inches or 20 millimeters, the caliper or caliper bearings must be replaced. Measuring guide pin to guide sleeve clearance. Remove the pad retainer but leave the brake pads installed. Attach a magnetic dial gauge holder to the carrier on the short bearing side of the caliper. Using a measuring point on the caliper, press the caliper in the direction of the carrier. Zero the dial gauge. Using a suitable tool between the caliper and the carrier, force them in opposite directions. Read the maximum value on the dial gauge. If the value was greater than 0.079 inches or 2 millimeters, the caliper or caliper bearings will require replacement. Guide pin seal inspection. Remove the pads from the caliper and slide the caliper inwards. Inspect inboard guide pin seals for damage. If any damage is found, the seals will need to be replaced. Tappet and boot inspection. Remove pads from caliper. Advance the shear adapter clockwise until boots are clearly visible. Inspect the boots and tappet assemblies for damage, corrosion, etc. Caution: do not extend the tappets more than 30 millimeters or 1.18 inches, or the caliper will need to be replaced. This concludes the disc brake inspection's maintenance orientation on the Excelsior XDE 40-foot bus. Should you require further information, consult your New Flyers service manual or your supervisor.